Hi now, hi now. Hi, Nye. We're back. Hi now. Let me go into something that'll probably upset a lot of people, and hopefully it does. Some people are aware, some are not. We were talking, David and I were talking about getting nailed with bills because of ambulances or whatever. And to me, I always wonder, why are we paying salaries? Why are we paying for equipment such as ambulances and all that through our taxes if we then have to pay through the system? And of course, the answer is, well, it would cost a lot more to the taxpayer if we didn't pay co-pays or get charged for an ambulance service that's deemed to be not an emergency. But one of the things that really bugs me is when you go into a website called Nye, what is it? I forgot the name of it. I'm old. It's going to be shown. There it is. It's called transparentnevada.com. If you have the internet, go on that website and check it out. And you see at the bottom there, those are two. One's for Nevada, or for the county of Nye, and the others for Pahrump. Now, I'm going to read off some of the salaries for our fire and ambulance personnel. The top one is getting $198,000 a year. Then it goes down, $152,000. Now, this is total pay and benefits. $152,000, $136,000, $135,000. Another 135, 130, 125, 120, 117, 116, 110, 109, 105, 105, 103, 101, 101, 99, etc. And it goes down from there. Now these are, for most of us in Nye, these are totally exorbitant amounts. The current median household incomes as of 2013, that's kind of like the average. For a household, it's $38,000. For an individual, it's $21,000. And it was $17,800 or $17,700 in the year 2000. So our salaries, because of the economy, because of all the rest, we're a retirement community, it is nothing. I mean, $17,000, $21,000 for the individuals, and $38,000 for the families. Now you look at what our government employees are making, $200,000, most of them $100,000 and up. And yet we are having to pay for ambulance service. There's something radically wrong there, folks. And this applies not just to fire and rescue, and it applies to everything. The DA's office, NCSO, the salaries are huge. They normally start around $200,000 and go down very similar to this. It is a lot of money we're paying for these folks. 3, 4, 5 times of what the average person in Nye is getting as a family. And then what further makes you mad is when you see the same last name in multiple places on the payroll. And you say, holy cow. We can't call it corruption officially because it's cronyism. It's nepotism. They're semantics. But when it comes right down to it, it's corruption. We're getting screwed. And again, the only way we're going to straighten it out is to become involved, way more than we are. You have guys like Ray, Louie, Dwight, Amy, Anthony, Richard, all kinds of names I could name off, but we can't do it alone. We can't even come close to doing it alone. We need you guys to get involved. Ray, what do you got, buddy?
First, I put the TV on mute. I learned that years ago, Chuck. So I muted so we don't get this feedback from the 8-second delay. I just want to tell you, when I first started working in 1962, my first job, I was a dishwasher, and I made 65 cents an hour. Now, when you throw these figures out, $100,000, $150,000, it almost scares me. I said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I used to work for 65 cents an hour when I was 16 years old. How can you fathom something now with these huge salaries that they're getting by the public servants? And you're right, the normal people are not making this kind of money. It's our servants that are making 3 and 4 and 5 times more than the normal people. It's just outrageous. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
And then they get amnesty from criminal activity. Meanwhile, we're getting murdered in courts with fines, with jail time. And this is all coming from people making 20 grand a year.
That's right. They just keep railroading people. I sat through those in custodies today, and I saw people begging for an OR, begging, and it just wasn't happening. And they're going to be sitting another 6-7 days in the slammer before they get another hearing. And if you don't have the juice, you don't have the pull, you don't know anybody out here, you're more or less doomed. That's about it. And even the public defenders. Now, there are some that really fight for the people, and a lot of them is the public defenders. They just want to get this stuff out of the way because they don't have time, or their private practice would interfere with the public defender deal. The public defenders have private practices. They take in cases and they make a lot of money. Some of them won't even talk to you for less than $5,000.
Yep.
What is that? Who can afford 5 large to talk to a lawyer locally? And I believe that they have a monopoly on it where they're all together in cahoots and they fix their prices. Absolutely. I really believe that, because I remember it used to be you can get what they call put money like $250, $250, or $500, a retainer they called it. Now, if you just talk to them, they want the money, and they don't return it. If they do an hour's work, they don't say, I worked 1 hour, $500. No, they keep the whole lump. It's just not right. And you know about that, right, Chuck?
Yeah, and since Tom's not here, I can really dump on him. Most people, when they get arrested or get charged with a crime, they're whether they be court appointed or if they pay the money to retain them. You don't talk to your lawyer until right before the preliminary, really. You go through the arraignment and the pre-trial, and most people don't get to say a word to their lawyers because they're so busy. I mean, Harry Gensler walks around with 2 huge boxes filled with cases that he's got for the day or for the morning. They are just inundated because everyone's being charged with a petty crime or a real crime. But the bottom line is it's McDonald's drive-through.
And one thing that I see in court that amazes me, and it was brought up a few years ago, when someone said, well, if I get a public defender, the judges said you may have to pay for the public defender if we find that your income is a little more than it should be. And they said, well, what would I have to pay for a public defender? And this was Tina Brisbille said, anywhere from $200 to $500. How can someone, a public defender, who's going to get reimbursed for his time about $500 for whatever case he's doing, a partial case, and he could ask $5,000 if you're an individual coming up to his office and hiring him? Where's the disparity to the difference between $500 and $5,000 for the same case? It just amazes me, and I see it every day, and it's disgusting. That's what it is.
It's confiscation of assets. The police do it. They raid a home. They find cash. Well, you must be a drug dealer, so we're going to confiscate it. It's happening all over the country.
They call it asset forfeiture, and that is unconstitutional as hell. And
Right.
they do it. They just take it because they can. And then you have to hire a lawyer to get it back. That lawyer's going to charge you money, and you may get part of it back, but they always keep a little chunk for themselves. And the cops thrive on this because they can keep part of that money and do whatever they want, whether they use it for something on the job or if they use it to party. Some of these cops get this money and they go on vacation. They let the deputies have vacation time.
Absolutely.
And this money, it's ridiculous.
By the way, I was charged with a gross misdemeanor by my neighbors who who absolutely fabricated the story because I had reported it to the police about their activity, including trespassing, stealing, and things resembling drugs. So they called the police, and the police come over. They charged me with a crime based on ridiculous evidence and testimony. And I have to pay two grand, and that's because Tom's my buddy, for this ridiculous charge, which could cost me a year in jail or a $5,000 fine. Now, another lady I talked to who went through a similar ridiculous charge, but hers was attempted murder, she had to fork out, I think it was 18 grand. And it went to the preliminary, and luckily Judge Jasperson was the judge, and dismissed the case because it was an absolute joke. But she still had to pay 18 grand.
That's right. There's no refund. There's no refund involved. You just lose the money. And lives are ruined. This is what amazes me, and especially the young people, because I've been watching for 14 years in these courts on a daily basis. I'm there virtually every day unless it's a dark day where nothing's happening. And I see these young kids that are in their early 20s, and their lives are ruined.
Yeah.
With the charges put against them, the stacked charges. And just yesterday, I actually got tossed out of Lane's courtroom on juvenile because one of the people that worked there said, well, I looked on the website, and it's a closed court since last year. And I confronted Lane on the bench, and he didn't know anything about it, so I just left sooner than cause a chaos in a courtroom. But what is this? They can just close a courtroom and say, you can't be in there. That's what they call a star chamber. Star chambers are illegal. They're unconstitutional, and they're pulling it. When Walker locks her courtroom door, she makes it a star chamber, and she shouldn't be doing it. And I tell her outside the courtroom, I said, Judge, you really shouldn't be doing it, but yet they are. And I'm just really upset about it.
And sadly, you're often the only one there, other than other defendants and family. But I know for my trial, you were the only one there. That's the first time I ever met you.
Yeah. Well, I try, and that's another thing. There's 4 courtrooms. If they're all going at the same time, I can only be in one. I kid and say, if there's 2 adjoining courtrooms, they should cut a hole in the wall so I could put my head through and watch what's going on in the second one if the first one kind of gets a little lackluster,
Okay, Ray, we got to go to break, buddy.
All right, I'm going to call you again in the last segment.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.